Here for to hear Tony. Betsy, do you want to introduce Tony? Betsy, go there.
We're very lucky to have Tony Secondo with us tonight. Tony has been a member of the Historical Society for 30 years, and we have so much to thank Tony for through the years, especially for all of his work with the Society and the museum, and sticking with it for so long. So please welcome Tony.
First of all, I want to make sure that people in the back are able to hear me.
Oh, yeah.
Good? Very good. I don't know whether you've heard, but I'm Anthony Secondo, and I live here in Enfield in the Haswell area, lifetime, except for some military service over in Korea, and some schooling that I went through. And I had the Historical Society as well. As of today, I don't know what will happen next month. I do appreciate the crowd that's in here. It's more than we had last night, but I can understand the Friends of the Library are a popular group also. When I was approached to be a speaker, and that was some 5 or 6 months ago, it was a question as to what we talk about. And anyway, after some discussion and thinking, I'm going to cover 2 areas. One area is that I'm part of the Historical Society, and we have a museum, and we do get out and talk once in a while, such as we're doing this evening. Let me ask you a question. How many people have attended the museum at any time? Well, I'm very pleased, very pleased. And I do hope that you get back there, because we do change displays periodically. We'd like to have a couple of changes each year. We'll be reopening the last week in May, and every Sunday, except for a couple ones when we get competition from our town. But anytime at all. I also want to add that during the summer months, in particular when it gets warmer, if you have visitors from out of town, please give us a call, and we'll be glad to take you through at any time, any week. It'll take a good hour to take you through the museum. So don't hesitate, that's what we're here for. Which I also want to mention that we're all volunteers, all of us. You people, if you join, you hopefully will be a volunteer. We enjoy having some new people, and they're amazed to see the display that we have there. It is, for a town our size and for volunteer staff, I'm very happy to say we have a beautiful museum. Which brings up another question. As far as the building, the physical building itself, the town owns the building. And they will cover costs involving the exterior, and we take care of the interior. But sometimes we squeeze a little more elsewhere. They helped us with furnaces a couple of years ago. But that's part of our physical activity. To get started, we're going to talk about who is the Historical Society, and how did they get started, and how do they operate nowadays? And I know it's kind of a dry subject, and I'll go quickly through it, because I am amazed the number of people that I come across. Well, where's the museum? They're residents here in Enfield, but don't know about us. So I'm taking this opportunity to let you know. When do we get started? Actually, we get started, and I was not part of it at that time. We get started in about 1960 with the Wallop School. Now, I'm using terms that you probably have not heard of, but Enfield had 9 school districts, I believe it was, and Wallop School was one of them. Now, nowadays, a school committee operates all schools. They're responsible for budgeting all schools. At an earlier time, and the history goes back to 1700, at an earlier time, it was only a committee within the district that they were located in. Each district had a committee of their own. Of course, it was kind of a lousy way to operate, so one committee is able to supervise all of them, budget for all of them. So we go back to Wallop School of 1700, which was a wooden building. I might add that they're within our presence here. I'm looking at her, and she attended the Wallop School, and we'll let you know later on who she is. But 1700, there was a wooden building that caught fire and disappeared. It was replaced by the present brick building in about 1800. In between there was an addition to the building as well, the cloakroom. And as far as the building itself, the exterior basically only went through one major change. Now, the present brick building also had a fire. And that is when local people got together and said, we don't want to tear this building down, we want to save it. And at that point, they formed the Historical Society very shortly after it. However, within a year or so, there was another building that was getting ready to come down, and that was our present Old Town Hall building. Town was going to tear it down. I remember it. I was on a committee that helped restore that building. There was no basement in that building initially, and water underground was coming to the surface to a point where the north wall was getting ready to cave in. And it took us at least 2 years to get it going. We did get it open in 1980, which was the anniversary or birthday of the town of Enfield. It was a tercentenary period. And it was not complete. The front of the building and the inside was completely restored. And at that point, we formed a legal historical society with legal organizations. You have many things to worry about. You've got to have financial backing to take and keep you operating. You have to get dues, people to help pay dues, but dues don't take and pay to complete finances. You have to have a board of directors. Well, you're familiar with the good operating organization. We had to go through all that. We've got our bylaws, and then we start to accumulate material to go into the museum building. And at that period of time, we find out that many of our members had historical items in their homes that were donated to them by townspeople. So we kind of gathered all that. Some of it we couldn't find. There were notes made by various people that there was some shaker material or something that we just never found. And let's look at some notes here now. Yeah, that was the seat of our organization, the fires, really. And some of our members are in here. Lois, why don't you stand up? I'm going to pick on you tonight. This is Lois Ogier. And Marge, you can stand up also. Thank you, Lois. Lois was a docent out at the Wallop School, and when we wanted information of what existed a few years ago, we always went to Lois, and she came up with the answers. I covered the periods of the Wallop School. Now, as far as our building is concerned, the museum building, that building was built in 1775 by a gentleman by the name of Isaac Kibbe. And it was a meeting house church. It served two purposes. And around, it got moved. It was across the street. We cannot find an individual who could really tell us where across the street. There's the gentleman who was a historian at the church, and he has ideas. All we find is reference to, in printed material, that the building was across the street, X number of feet to the south or whatever. But keep in mind that the diagonally across the street, where all the religious buildings are, that was the town green of colonial period. Town greens were used by all people at that time. And there was only one building on that green that I'm aware of, and it shows up on a map in 1869. A gentleman by the name of Grant had a building on the southern end of the green, which is no longer there. So the existing building got moved. It was a meeting house church from 1775 to about 1825, 1830. And it was a community center from 1892 through World War II. All people were using it. Red Cross used it. Anybody was able to take and rent it, just like this room right here. That was, again, I repeat, from 75 through 1800, and the community center in 1848 to 1892. In 1923, it was taken over by another organization, the Enfield Community Association. Excuse me. Enfield Community Association was another citizen group that helped each other out, had periodic parties or celebrations, and there's evidence, we could come up with the evidence that of what they did. Not that it was bad, but what they did as far as making changes. In 1964, thank you. It's water. In 64, it was condemned. Town was going to tear it down. And if they didn't tear it down, it was going to fall over. We did have the engineers check it out and came up with a solution to it, which we took over. We took over the building, and we're very proud of taking it over and rebuilding it. I'm sure if you go in there that you're going to be pleased. In 1972, it was listed on the National Register of historic places. 1980 it opened. Now, the displays in there, we try to keep it displays where we're highlighting Enfield history. We've got Bigelow in there, the rug company. We've got one of their machines in the basement. We've got the powder mills. We've got all kind of containers, shipping containers. There was a tester for testing powder. A rather crude type of machine, but that's what they were using. There's a big Indian display in there. Material for that Indian display was donated to the museum by Red Edgar, our councilman. His father was kind of a doodle helper in the neighborhood, and he used to plow the land from the museum building going south to the double highway. And anytime he saw a shiny stone, he would pick it up. And there's got to be, perhaps 1,000 Indian arrowheads and whatever. Military stuff, we will display military stuff except for, we don't want to display weapons of any kind, swords or any of that. We do collect, very carefully collect some uniforms, but not all of them. We are very mindful of protecting what we have in there. We, a couple of years ago, spent some really $10,000 to put in air conditioning, proper heating, and storage facilities to protect the items that we have. Clothing is a little different, and you need a lot of space. If we get an Air Force uniform, we don't want to have 10 of them. So we refrain from taking them. That's just one item that we'll refuse. But so we get powder, I think pretty good assortment of items. The other building that a couple other buildings, we have the museum. We also have the Parsons House. Many of you probably have visited the Parsons House on Enfield Street. It's a Victorian house. Martha Parson, who lived in it, saved everything, even though styles changed. What will change went up in the attic. So very little of their displays really came from the outside. Very little. I think there's some shaker items in there. And of course, that committee has also purchased another house on Post Office Road, the Terry Chilson House. It's a very old home, and the reason why they bought that is to get an exit to the rear of the building. Up till then, it was only one in the front. Now, a lot of property, we have to maintain them. We are fortunate to have some money coming in from people who donate trust funds. We have two of those. Whenever people donate like that, you can't use the principal, we use only the interest. Occasionally, we get wind that there's an auction and there's Enfield shaker items in it. We'll attend it and purchase one or two good items. We don't just buy it because it's an antique. We try to associate it with Enfield. And we do have membership money. We have an occasional tax sale. At this point, we are not begging for money, but we could use it. And as I said, nobody is getting paid. I've already mentioned some of these. let's go to the next page. As far as membership is concerned, and there are some applications up here, I would love to see people become members. We have approximately 250 members now, and members get the bulletins, newsletters that were floating around. Sorry, I apologize for not having more. Those were left over from past mailings to our members. So members get those 4 times a year. Now, we have, as I said, 250 dues-paying members. There's 8 classes of memberships, from a $10 individual to a $500 benefactor. Now, as far as Enfield history, I'll tell you.